Alleluia, 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 Alleluia. The Son of Man came to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. An argument arose among the disciples about which of them was the greatest. Jesus realized the intention of their hearts and took a child and placed it by his side and said to them, "Whoever receives this child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. For the one who is least among all of you is the one who is the greatest." Then John said in reply, "Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to prevent him because he does not follow in our company." Jesus said to him, "Do not prevent him, for whoever is not against you is for you." The Gospel of the Lord. Job gives us a great example in our first reading of someone who is trusting in the Lord through the midst of suffering, which is something that's good for all of us to hear and all of us that are called to do. And those words that Job speaks are words that we can take to heart as well and say, the Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Of course, Job, we heard, had so many things befall him on one particular day, probably the worst day of his life, I would imagine. The livestock dying and being consumed by fire, the house falling over, his children dying, all of these things. And yet, in the midst of it, he's still able to proclaim, to renew his confidence in God. Sometimes we can be so funny, right? We could be tempted to rail against God because we've stubbed our toe or something like that. And sometimes we can be so petty about the things that make us start to question God's great love for us. But Job gives us a great example that we can follow. That even when we experience suffering, trust that God has not abandoned us. Hold on to those eternal truths. God doesn't change. God is all loving. God is all powerful. And although we might not understand why he permits certain sufferings, those things will never change. He's all good, all loving, all powerful. For each one of us in our lives is always working for us. And he permits struggles and sufferings, right? It's not always so black and white, right, that we maybe suffer because we are sinful. No, not necessarily. Jesus suffered, right? He suffered by going on the cross and dying on the cross. If the one who's most innocent among us was led through suffering, we can unite our sufferings to his too. But the one thing that we do know is that whatever suffering befalls us, God will bring good out of it. Maybe not in this life, maybe it will be in the next life, but he will bring good out of it. We can have great confidence in that. And so then we can proclaim, as Job did, blessed be the name of the Lord, even in the midst of our sufferings. And so have that faith that Job had.